All right, so we're diving into Think and Grow Rich. I know it's a classic, but we're gonna go deeper here. You guys sent over a YouTube summary, so we're gonna like really break it down
Yeah.
to see like what are the big ideas? Does this stuff still work today? You know what I mean? What's super interesting to me is how Hill talks about this winner's mindset,
Uh-huh.
almost like there's a formula to it, and this whole thing about thoughts being powerful, like can actually shape your world.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of controversial, I get it, but some people swear by it, right? He even brings up the sixth sense thing, which, I don't know, I'm curious.
Well, the interesting thing is Hill interviewed like tons of super successful people
Mhm.
trying to figure out what they had in common. It wasn't just about wanting money, but the whole mental game.
Oh, okay.
That's where this thought says things idea comes in. It's really at the core of the book.
Yeah, like your thoughts can actually make stuff happen, especially when you're like really driven and persistent.
Right.
It's almost like magic or something.
Yeah.
But Hill says there's a science to it.
It does sound a little too good to be true, doesn't it?
It does.
I mean, that's why people have been debating it for decades,
Yeah.
really. But even if we're a little skeptical, there's some interesting stuff to unpack. Like, think about the placebo effect.
Okay.
Science actually shows our beliefs can, like, really impact our physical well-being.
Oh, that's a great point. And Hill's got all these stories about people doing incredible things just by, using their minds. There's that one about Edwin Barnes who was totally fixated on working with Thomas Edison.
Oh, yeah. Barnes, he had this, like, absolute desire to work with Edison, the inventor. He was so determined. He hitchhiked all the way to New Jersey. No money, no backup plan, just pure, guts.
Wow. It's like he willed his way into Edison's company. And didn't Edison say he hired Barnes because he saw that fire in him?
Yeah. He saw that Barnes just wouldn't quit until he got what he wanted. And guess what? Barnes ended up as Edison's business partner and, yeah, wealthy. It shows how belief, like truly believing and not giving up, can be more valuable than anything else.
Totally. That's a perfect example of Hill's 3 feet from gold story, right? The
Yeah.
guy who quits on his gold mine right before hitting the jackpot,
Oh, yeah.
and the next guy buys it and strikes it rich just a few feet deeper.
So many of us give up right before the breakthrough. It's a shame.
Oh, for sure.
Hill really emphasizes pushing through those moments of doubt. But it all begins with desire. That's the starting point. And he gives 6 very clear steps to turn that desire into something real.
All right, let's hear them. What's step one?
Step 1, be super clear about how much money you want. No vague stuff. Be precise.
Okay, specific number. Got it. What's next?
Step 2, figure out what you're willing to give in return for that wealth. Time, skills, effort, whatever it takes.
It's like an exchange, right? You're not just wishing for a handout.
Exactly. It's about recognizing success requires like an investment from you.
All right, I'm liking this. So what's step three?
Step 3 is setting a deadline. It creates that urgency. It forces you to actually make a plan and start doing something instead of just daydreaming.
Makes sense. A deadline makes it real. What's next?
Step 4 is where the real work comes in. You got to create a detailed plan of action. This isn't daydreaming anymore. This is turning those desires into concrete steps. Hill emphasizes breaking big goals into smaller, bite-sized chunks.
Right. Makes it less overwhelming. What's step 5?
Step 5, this is interesting. Write it all down. Goals, deadlines, your plan, everything. In a clear, concise statement. This is like solidifying your commitment. It's more than just organizing your thoughts. It's a contract with yourself. You're making a decision, a conscious decision, to pursue those goals.
Powerful. So it's almost like creating your own personal success mantra, but it's not enough to just write it down, right?
Right. Step 6, this is crucial. Read that statement out loud twice a day, every morning, every night. And visualize yourself, really see yourself already achieving those goals.
Ah, the visualization part. Hill was ahead of his time with that. Everyone's talking about visualization these days.
It's like a mental rehearsal for success, training your mind to believe it before it even happens.
Oh, I like that. But there's one more thing with this step that I find fascinating. Hill talks about befriending your other you, like this undefeated version of yourself fueled by faith.
And it's important to be clear about what he means by faith. It's not necessarily religious faith. It's more like an unshakable belief in your ability to achieve what you want.
Yeah.
And this belief is strengthened by those affirmations, the visualization, and by tapping into what he calls infinite intelligence.
Okay, infinite intelligence, that's where it gets a little, well, mystical, right?
It's open to interpretation. That's part of what makes Hill's work so interesting. Some see it as a universal force, a cosmic energy. Others connect it to the collective unconscious, this vast reservoir of knowledge and creativity that we all can tap into. But the point is, faith acts as a bridge between your conscious mind and a source of unlimited potential.
So it's not just believing in yourself, but believing in something bigger that supports your dreams.
Exactly. Think about it. Every invention, every company, every piece of art started as an idea in someone's mind. They had faith in their vision, and they took action, persistent action, to make it happen.
It's pretty inspiring to think about it that way. We all have that potential, but how do we tap into it? Hill says the vehicle is autosuggestion. What is that?
That's where those abstract ideas become practical techniques. Autosuggestion is about consciously using language and imagery to reprogram your subconscious mind.
Okay, so like using affirmations. I've heard about that.
Exactly. It's using positive statements, repeated consistently and with feeling, to overwrite those negative beliefs and doubts that might be holding you back.
So replacing self-criticism with the soundtrack of like empowerment.
Exactly. But here's the catch. The subconscious mind, it doesn't judge between good and bad. It just absorbs whatever thoughts and emotions we feed it most often.
So it's not just about thinking happy thoughts every now and then. It's about being really deliberate with our mental diet.
Imagine your subconscious mind is like a garden. If you're always planting seeds of doubt and fear, you'll get a lot of weeds. But if you cultivate that garden with positive affirmations and empowering beliefs, you're creating fertile ground for your dreams to flourish.
Okay, I love that. It's like we need to be mindful of our thoughts.
Absolutely. And that's what Hill was getting at with autosuggestion. Our minds are powerful tools. By mastering our thoughts, we can master our reality.
So we've got the desire, the plan, the positive thinking, but even with the right mindset, you need the knowledge to back it up. That's where specialized knowledge comes in.
You got it. He makes a distinction between general knowledge, which is great for trivia but not for building wealth, and specialized knowledge that's specific to your field, your area of expertise.
So becoming a master of your craft, knowing your industry inside and out.
Exactly. And that specialized knowledge fuels your imagination. Hill called imagination the workshop of the mind. He believed imagination is where all great achievements are born.
So not just daydreaming, but actually using imagination to solve problems, to innovate.
He outlined two types of imagination: synthetic imagination, that's combining existing ideas in new ways, and creative imagination. That's about hunches, insights, intuition.
So it's not just about the facts, but seeing the bigger picture, connecting the dots in a way that leads to breakthroughs.
Every successful invention, business, artwork started as a spark of imagination.
Exciting to think about. We all have that potential.
And Hill gives us tools to cultivate that potential. He talked about developing our imagination through observation, study, experimentation.
We'd have to actively participate in the process.
Exactly. Hill believed imagination is like a muscle. You got to exercise it.
I'm rethinking my own creative process now. It's not enough to wait for inspiration. I need to be actively engaging my imagination.
And that's a key takeaway from Think and Grow Rich. It's not just a get-rich book. It's a blueprint for personal growth and self-mastery.
Recognizing the power of our minds, learning how to use that power to achieve our goals and live more fulfilling lives.
Becoming the architects of our own destinies.
All right, we've covered a lot. Desire, planning, autosuggestion, knowledge. Hill really understood the human mind and success, but he also knew there's one thing that can make or break our efforts: overcoming fear.
Fear, yeah. Powerful emotion can paralyze us, and Hill dedicated a whole chapter to understanding it and how to outsmart it. He identifies 6 basic fears that we all face.
Really? Like what? I'm curious.
He lists fear of poverty, fear of criticism, fear of ill health, fear of losing love, fear of old age, and fear of death. These fears are deep in our subconscious. They can manifest in all sorts of ways, from procrastination to like self-sabotage.
Wow, that's quite a list. Like universal anxieties we all struggle with.
Exactly. And Hill argued that these fears are often irrational, unfounded, more like imagined threats than real dangers.
Okay, so how do we fight them? How do we stop them from holding us back?
That's where the rubber meets the road. We'll dig into Hill's strategies for overcoming fear in part 2 of our deep dives. Stay tuned.
Okay, so those 6 basic fears, right? Like shining a light on those anxieties that can really mess with us.
Yeah, and just acknowledging them. That's the first step to overcoming them. Hill was all about practical stuff, you know? He didn't just
Right.
say, don't be scared. He gave us actual techniques to manage those fears, even like transform them into something useful.
Okay, so what are those techniques? Where do we even begin with something as deep-rooted as, like, real fear?
Well, Hill thought that fear often comes from not understanding something. The more you understand it, the less scary it gets.
Right.
He was big on positive self-suggestion too, like using it to reprogram our subconscious and replace fear-based thoughts with, empowering beliefs.
So facing those fears head on, challenging those negative thought patterns.
Exactly. Instead of ignoring them, Hill said confront them. Ask yourself, what's the absolute worst that could happen? Often those imagined consequences, they're way worse than reality.
It's like that saying, we suffer more in our heads than in real life.
Exactly. And once you pinpoint where that fear comes from, you can start breaking it down. Replace those negative thoughts with positive affirmations and, like, really believe in yourself.
Makes sense. But what about those fears that are almost like instinct? Fear of failure, fear of judgment? Those are hard to shake.
Hill knew those fears are, like, ingrained in us, human nature, but he argued that they're often made worse by how we're raised, by society, all the negative messages we hear growing up. He said, question those messages. Challenge the beliefs that hold you back.
So they're not necessarily true reflections of us, but more like learned responses. We can unlearn them and reprogram ourselves. It's pretty empowering when you think about it that way.
Right. And Hill had tools to do just that. He was big on setting clear goals,
Yeah.
making an action plan, and then actually doing something consistently.
Mhm.
He thought action is like the opposite of fear.
When you're busy chasing your goals, you don't have time to get stuck in fear and doubt, right?
Exactly. And he also said, surround yourself with supportive people, people who believe in you, encourage you to go after your dreams.
It's like building that positive network to help you through the tough times.
Exactly. Hill understood. Success is rarely a solo mission. We need mentors, allies, people cheering us on along the way.
Speaking of allies, Hill had some interesting things to say about the subconscious mind and its link to what he called the sixth sense. I want to unpack that. It seems a little more, well, mystical than some of the other stuff we've talked about.
He definitely went into some out there concepts. The sixth sense is one of them. But even if we're a bit skeptical, there's some cool stuff to learn there.
Okay, walk me through it. What did he actually mean by the sixth sense?
Well, he described it as a kind of like gut feeling, intuitive wisdom that goes beyond our normal senses and, logical thinking. He thought everyone has access to this sixth sense, but you need to develop a deeper awareness, become attuned to your inner guidance system.
So not like superpowers, but more about refining our intuition, learning to trust those gut feelings we often ignore.
Exactly. And Hill connected the sixth sense to the subconscious mind. He saw it as this huge storehouse of knowledge and creativity that we can all tap into.
He described the subconscious as like a recorder that never stops, absorbing everything, shaping our thoughts, feelings, even actions.
Right. It doesn't judge. It doesn't analyze. It just accepts whatever we feed it, good or bad. That's why he was such a big fan of autosuggestion. Using those positive affirmations and visualizations to reprogram our subconscious and align it with our goals.
It's wild to think about how powerful our subconscious is, how much it impacts our lives.
It is. And Hill believed that by getting a handle on our thoughts and emotions, we can basically reprogram our subconscious and, like, unlock our true potential.
So the sixth sense is almost like the final stage of all these other principles, understanding ourselves, mastering our minds, believing we can achieve anything.
Exactly. And while the sixth sense might sound a little out there, it's really about developing intuition and trusting our inner voice.
Recognizing that we have access to this deeper level of knowledge and guidance, something beyond logic. Pretty empowering.
Totally. It connects back to Hill's belief in the power of faith, too. Not religious faith, but deep trust in ourselves and the forces that support our growth.
So realizing we're not alone on this journey, there's something bigger, a universal intelligence that we can connect with for guidance.
Exactly. Might sound a little woo-woo to some, but I think it's a beautiful idea, very empowering.
It is. It speaks to that need for connection, for meaning beyond just material things. But even with the right mindset and believing in ourselves, there's still the challenge of making those beliefs real. Hill talked a lot about action, didn't he?
Oh yeah, he did. Hill believed knowledge without action is useless. He thought taking action, consistent action towards your goals, that's how dreams become reality.
And not just any action, right? He was specific about planned, persistent, and purposeful action.
Right. He thought you need a clear vision of what you want, a detailed plan to get there, and then like rock solid determination to see it through, no matter what.
Which brings us back to those 6 steps for making your desires a reality. It's like a roadmap, right? But even with the best plans, there's always going to be obstacles. How did Hill deal with those challenges?
Hill knew setbacks are part of the journey. He didn't see them as failures, more like opportunities to learn and grow. He said, embrace those challenges. They're stepping stones to success.
So, building resilience, learning to bounce back from the tough times.
Exactly. He was big on persistence, too, never giving up on your dreams no matter how hard it gets. He believed persistence is the key that unlocks everything.
It's like that quote, success isn't final, failure isn't fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts.
That's it. And Hill had practical tips for being persistent. Remind yourself of your goals every day. Visualize the outcome. Surround yourself with supportive people. Focus on the good stuff.
Great tips. It's about creating the right mindset, the right environment.
Right. And that's one of the most valuable things about Think and Grow Rich. It's not just about money. It's about developing a success mindset, a set of principles for a better life.
It's realizing we have the power to create our own destiny.
Exactly. And I think that message is just as powerful today as it was like 100 years ago when Hill wrote the book.
Timeless wisdom, for sure. But there's one thing we haven't talked about, and it's probably the most controversial part: sex transmutation. I'm curious. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that one needs some careful explaining. It's important to be sensitive, understanding. We'll dive into that in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay, so we're back for the last part of our deep dive into Think and Grow Rich. We've talked about a lot, from desire and belief to, persistence and action. But we got to address this last concept, maybe the most controversial one in the whole book: sex transmutation. Honestly, I wasn't sure if we should even bring it up, but it's such a big part of Hill's thinking, we can't just ignore it.
Right, it definitely needs some explaining. And it's important to be mindful. Remember, the book was written in a wholly different time, different views on, well, everything to do with sex. But even with that context, I think Hill's perspective on sex transmutation has some valuable insights.
Okay, so let's get into it. What did Hill even mean by that? It's not like literally changing sexual energy into something else, is it?
No, not about denying or suppressing desire. It's more about understanding how powerful that energy is and consciously channeling it, like redirecting it towards other things, creative stuff, business, personal growth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So harnessing that drive, that passion, and using it for goals that are, aligned with your bigger purpose.
Exactly. Hill believes sexual energy is one of the strongest forces we have, human nature and all that.
Yeah.
And if we learn to control it, direct it, we could do incredible things. He saw it as fuel for creativity, inspiration, motivation.
He even connected it to those mind stimulants you talked about, right? Music, love, ambition, the things that raise your mental frequency and boost creativity.
Right. He thought those things tap into the same basic energy as sexual desire, but they can be channeled in ways that are more, I guess you could say, productive for growth and achievement.
So refining that raw energy, turning it into something that helps you reach your goals.
Exactly. Recognizing the power of your emotions and using them to your advantage, not letting them control you.
Okay, I see what he's getting at. But I can also see how this whole idea could be misunderstood, even misused.
For sure. It's super important to approach it carefully. And it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all thing. What works for one person might not work for another. But Hill's main point, I think, is to understand how powerful our desires are and learn to use them in ways that are, positive and fulfilling.
Making your actions match your values, using your energy to build a life you love.
Exactly. That's what Think and Grow Rich is really all about, right? Personal empowerment, self-mastery, recognizing the potential we all have and learning how to use it to achieve our dreams.
It's taking charge of your thoughts, beliefs, and actions, creating a life that reflects your deepest desires.
And realizing that success isn't something that just happens to you. It's something you create through your efforts, your mindset, your belief in yourself.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Think and Grow Rich, I want to leave you with this. What if everything Hill said is true? What if we really can shape our own reality with our thoughts, beliefs, actions? What kind of life would you create if you truly believed in your own limitless potential? I think that's something for all of us to think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.